An ordinary shift for a police officer.
It started out as nothing.
It was innocuous. It was a little crime.
Can quickly take an extraordinary turn.
A simple traffic stop went stratospheric within 2 minutes.
Speed is 70 miles an hour.
He's outside the petrol station fighting with another male.
A routine case.
You can start off with something, and it can turn into something completely different.
Taser! Taser! I'm here from you!
Can suddenly spiral into a serious incident.
Then it switched. He locked the door. She knew that something was very, very wrong here.
Stand by, I think we're going to have a decamp. One got out with a baseball bat. There's a ton of cannabis in the car.
They were literally on a rampage.
Sometimes the most minor crimes
I was looking for a stolen quad bike, found a lot more.
Can crack major cases.
We were now possibly looking at a serial killer.
Today on Big Little Crimes, the casual theft of a camera betrays a dangerous predator.
And then he went inside, and then it switched. He locked the door.
An investigation into scam websites exposes a multi-million-pound fraud. But first, the hunt for a pair of brazen burglars.
Oh, look at that little beauty.
Takes an extraordinary turn.
No one wants to be burgled. It's a fear of most people. Convicting people that are causing innocent people harm, that's where you get your real satisfaction, being a police officer.
Taking criminals off the street is what Damen Brogan loves most about the job. So he relished a straightforward burglary case landing on his desk.
There was intelligence that 2 people were involved in what were called dwelling burglaries, burglaries of homes. There was a vehicle potentially linked to one of those individuals.
The 2 wanted men are behind late-night break-ins, spreading fear throughout a local community. And police are on the lookout for a car one of them is known to be driving.
That vehicle was picked up on a number plate recognition camera, and that resulted in a short pursuit. The pursuit was stopped because it was getting too dangerous in the town centre. The risk was too high. The following morning, there was a further number plate camera hit for the same vehicle. So officers have tried a different tactic.
This time, officers planned ahead to avoid a chase. Now they're waiting for the men to come to them.
We knew where both suspects lived and addresses linked to them, and sure enough, the cars come to one of them where officers were waiting around a corner.
The police are one step ahead of the suspects. They need to get them into custody.
The officers have forced entry to the house, knowing that 2 wanted offenders were within the house. Officers have found both suspects hidden under a bed in one of the bedrooms.
Eric Pierce and Matthew Jones are arrested for burglary.
A bag containing balaclavas, gloves and tools that you could use to break into houses was found within the room. The balaclavas and gloves clearly pointed towards the sort of behaviour that we suspected they were involved in.
It's a damning discovery. But there's something else that could be worth its weight in gold.
One of the suspects had a mobile phone, so that was seized as well, because we can use that to gain further evidence.
While Damen waits for the phone to be downloaded, he's forced to release them on bail. Days later, he has a new breakthrough.
We've downloaded and found significant evidence on that linking them to other burglaries.
As well as the burglaries, the phone shows the pair have stolen a number of expensive cars.
It was quite clear that the method and the mindset of the 2 suspects, they were breaking into people's houses to obtain their car keys to steal high-value cars. Every time it was a high-value car.
Damien's hunch is right. The two thieves have been committing crime across the county. This little case is about to get much bigger. The phone evidence links them to a number of other recent burglaries.
The phone we seized allowed us to effectively get a window into his movements, and we also liaise with telecoms data companies, which can tell us an awful lot of information about where phones have been at certain times. So comparing what the phone showed us with burglaries that we knew had happened, that made us very clearly link these two individuals, certainly the individual whose phone we had, to a series of burglaries that happened in that fortnight.
It's a major breakthrough in this fast-moving case.
And we knew that they were burgling a number of homes, and they were quite literally on a spree, sometimes doing 2 or 3 a night. And we knew then that we had quite a large series of burglaries that we could put these two individuals as our key suspects.
The prolific pair are behind dozens of break-ins, and Damien's convinced this is just the tip of the iceberg. The team set out to gather more crucial evidence and start a surveillance operation.
So it's just trying to put in the best evidence in front of court to make sure that they receive a custodial sentence. We could link the two suspects together. We can do an awful lot of work with telecoms work. And in this case, you could see that the two key suspects had an awful lot of contact together. We're going to the same location, so they were clearly quite closely linked.
It's not long before Damien discovers that not only are they always together, but they're up to their old tricks again too.
As fast as we're trying to pull a picture together of a series of burglaries, it then became quite clear, all because of the phone that we'd seized and the associated telecoms that go with it. Every time we had a spike in burglaries, we knew it was them. And as fast as we were trying to build the case and get them arrested, they just kept carrying out doing more burglaries night after night.
This has come a long way from keeping a lookout for two wanted men. The list of crimes and victims just keeps on growing. Damien now has a much clearer idea of who he's up against, but pinning them down is proving to be difficult.
They're two what we call prolific offenders who are clearly entering people's homes at night when they're asleep. They would keep committing burglaries until they got what they were after. So if they were disrupted by the homeowners, they would flee. An hour or so later, we'd have another burglary in a different area of Cheltenham or the Cotswolds.
The suspects are committing terrifying burglaries, often with the homeowners asleep in the house. Damien needs to put an end to their crime spree. He starts by focusing on their cars.
We had no real understanding of why they were targeting certain particular makes and models of high-end cars. They're targeting very specific, high-end, very expensive, somewhere like £100,000 cars.
It's an organised and extremely lucrative crime. Just as soon as they've been pinched, the cars disappear. The thieves think they've covered their tracks, but they haven't banked on Damien's determination not to let them out of his sight.
A key part of this investigation was covert policing. Some of the technology with the vehicles allowed us to track some up to the West Midlands area. The more we started to investigate it and the volume of vehicles that were being taken, it was quite clear that they were being stolen to order.
These are not opportunistic robberies. The pair are hand-picking cars and deliberately targeting the homes of their owners.
And you know it gets down with the red leathers. Oh, look at that little beauty.
They've even brazenly filmed themselves on camera doing it.
This is an Audi that was stolen in Cheltenham. And it literally is like a promotional video for the car that they've just stolen for the criminals that the vehicle will be disposed to. So they've probably been instructed to go out and obtain certain types of models, and this will be a video sending upstream to the people who are obtaining the cars off them. This is what we've got.
Thanks again to the phone, Damien knows exactly what happens to the stolen car next.
This is both suspects living a high life, enjoying themselves in someone else's car. Neither have got driving licenses, so they shouldn't be even driving in the first place. This is them sort of effectively having a bit of a joyride, and forensic work and telecoms work, we can pinpoint this is 12 hours after the car's been stolen, and we can pinpoint that it's on its way up to the West Midlands to be disposed of. Whether they were going in containers abroad or being broken for parts, it's probably a mixture of the both.
It's a huge breakthrough for the investigation. Damien can now prove where they've taken the stolen cars to sell them on. He thinks he's cracked the case, but there's a problem.
It was quite clear that the suspects were becoming more savvy, more aware of some of the technologies involved, which made our jobs a little bit harder.
Just as the net is closing in, have the two thieves cottoned on to the fact they're being tracked? Later, the investigation accelerates beyond anyone's expectations.
It got to the stage that they were committing such a high volume of offences that we needed to react quickly. They were literally on a rampage.
In our next story, a detective's gut instinct about a stolen camera takes it from a routine crime to the most sinister and serious case, as she hunts for a mystery man who's not who he says he is. Shabnam Chowdhury has always had a sixth sense.
When I left school at a very young age, I started working in a menswear shop. I had a real eye for shoplifters and credit card fraudsters and so on.
Shabnam decided to swap the high street for the high ranks of the Metropolitan Police.
I've always been described as someone that's like a dog with a bone, you know, and you don't let go. And making sure that you've left no stone unturned, because ultimately it's all about the victim, isn't it?
And there's one victim she'll never forget. A woman who walked into the police station one very ordinary day.
It was a very busy day. The usual, volume of crimes that come in. This young Asian girl in her 20s came into the police station and she went to the front counter. She made an allegation of a theft of a camera.
It's a regular crime report. The victim claims the thief is a man she recently met.
The story behind it was that her family wanted her to get married, and arranged marriages are very prevalent in the culture of Asian communities. But they'd agreed that she could actually join a particular dating site.
She starts to look for a husband. And it isn't long before the girl connects with a man online.
He was about 30, she was in her 20s. He seemed well-educated. He came from a reasonably good background. And then they connected over a period of time. So they built up a rapport and a relationship online.
They soon arranged to meet for a first date.
She met up with him. He was very respectful. He was very nice to her. He was very pleasant, very polite. And then he said to her, "I'd like you to meet my parents today."
Things soon take an unusual turn. The woman claims her date stole a camera from her bag. But something about her story doesn't sit right.
She was quite upset. She seemed quite traumatized, and, it didn't marry up with the allegation that she was making.
Shabnam's instinct is there's more to this than meets the eye. The victim could be hiding something. She decides to spend a bit more time on it.
I was a detective inspector. It's not the kind of crime I would ordinarily investigate. It was a simple, what would appear to be a straightforward theft of a camera. But as a Muslim woman, I said, let me speak to her because I will hopefully be able to elicit a little bit more information from her. My gut feeling was that something here was not right at all. And I was kind of sure that there was more to it than she'd actually let on to us to begin with.
Before she speaks to the girl, Shabnam looks into what she's told police so far.
So this is quite similar to the camera that was stolen. For her, this was a digital footprint of her entire life, with her family, her extended family, friends and so on, and her fear that he might have been able to contact them and then send photographs. So she was really scared about that.
Shabnam feels like it's an odd thing to go to the police with. She senses this case is about much more than the camera.
This particular website was unique because it was specifically for those people that wanted to not just go onto a dating site. It was for people from Asian backgrounds to find a suitable life partner in terms of a husband or a wife. Looking at this website now, it certainly takes me back to when I was 18 years of age and my parents were looking to find a suitor for me for 2 whole years.
Shabnam knows just how sensitive a case this is, but arranging to interview the victim is proving difficult.
She won't allow us to go and visit her at her home because of her parents. She didn't want her family knowing what had happened. What we agreed between us was that we would arrange to meet her at a location that suited her, that she felt comfortable in, that we could hopefully have a conversation with her to find out exactly what was going on here, because it just didn't feel right.
They eventually agree to meet in a local car park.
We'd need to know more about the crime, the perpetrator, and how this whole situation had unfolded. She was very comfortable speaking with me because she was able to relate to me, and I was able to sort of, you know, reassure her, particularly around the cultural issues that she was really concerned about.
Shabnam manages to get the woman to trust her enough to talk again about what happened when she and her date went to go and meet his parents.
They arrived in the place in East London, and in actual fact it was a flat, not a house. So she was a little bit, oh, okay, it's a flat.
What she reveals to Shabnam next is about to turn this little crime into a big investigation.
He ushered her into the flat first of all, and then he went inside, and then it switched. He locked the door.
Later, as the victim reveals the true extent of the crime,
she's traumatized. She is complying.
Is there more to the offender than he makes out?
There was a chance that if he'd got away with it once, he could do it again.
In our next case, a few reports of a possible scam spiral into one of the biggest cases national trading standards have ever seen. There are billions of online payments made every day. And where there's cash, there's criminals trying to get their hands on it. But when Mike Andrews and his trading standards team noticed a spike in complaints about government websites, he didn't realize he was about to embark on the biggest case of his career.
I remember the day we set off down this path quite vividly. We've had something flagged to us. It's potentially interesting, but it probably needs a bit further work because at that point it wasn't apparent what the scale of the issue would be.
Mike's first port of call is to contact the victims.
So the issue that had been flagged was where consumers felt they'd been ripped off when they'd gone to websites and applied for official documentation. So, for example, it might be something like a passport, a driving licence, booking a driving test. They would go to a website that they thought was the official site because it was at the top of search engine rankings and pay their money, and then it was only afterwards they realised that they'd actually paid over the odds for that service.
It seems these websites are mimicking official government sites and taking people's money.
The vast majority of the websites we investigated in this case were almost identical to the official site. They would use the same colours, the same layouts, the same designs, and lots of other features that If you actually looked at them very, very closely, you would perhaps notice that something wasn't quite right.
The highly professional copycat websites suggest to Mike this could be a much bigger crime. But how much bigger?
Some of these websites that we looked at were being changed almost on a daily basis, as they were constantly trying to make sure they got the maximum out of them.
After months of intense analysis and hard graft, they make a breakthrough. They manage to link a small number of the websites to the same business. Mike and his team identify Peter Hall and his wife as being behind the potential scam.
Where we are now is a nice rural location, and this is exactly the sort of place where the Halls had set up their business. So they were working out of some quite nice converted old farm buildings that they turned into office premises.
With the officers identified, they're raided. Hall, his wife, and their staff are arrested. Mike and the team now go through their properties with a fine-tooth comb.
So the evidence that we recovered from the Hall's offices was absolutely vital in this investigation. So this is where we recovered the computers that we used to run the business. This is where we recovered lots of business records and also the mobile devices and tablets and the like that contained a lot of the communications and emails that we relied on.
The team quickly build up a picture. This business is bringing in a vast amount of money, which could mean plenty of people have been ripped off. Back in custody, the couple aren't giving anything away. But the team do discover Peter Hall has been linked to scams in the past.
It was quite clear from an early stage of our investigation that Peter was the mastermind behind this. And although a lot of the websites, the companies themselves, the bank accounts, the payment processing facilities that they had were in other people's names, to in some way try and distance Peter from the fraud because of his previous history, it was quite clear actually he was the one pulling the strings.
The couple and their accomplices are charged and released on bail. The team now embarks on the mammoth task of analysing their laptops, phones, and documents.
This is a copy of the official tax disc website back in 2014. Also back in 2014, this was the website that the Halls had designed that was being used to defraud consumers, and you can quite clearly see that it's almost identical to the official site. It's all designed to make it look to the consumer as if this is the official website. After we'd gone and seized all this evidence and we'd really got stuck into our investigation, that was when we really started to appreciate the true scale of it, the true numbers of consumers who'd actually been defrauded.
This has gone from a potential small-time scam to hundreds of thousands of innocent victims losing money. There are so many victims, it takes Mike and his team an astonishing 2 years to go through the mountain of evidence.
It's important in these cases that we've got to show that this was deliberate, and there was lots and lots of emails between Peter Hall and his accomplices, his web designers, the people he had running his search engine advertising, that clearly showed that they were deliberately trying to defraud consumers.
Hall's company made an eye-watering £37 million from scamming innocent people. And if that isn't shocking enough, they discover that Peter Hall is up to his old tricks, even though he's on bail. He set up another scam company with new employees.
I think the fact that Mr. Hall and his accomplices got these new companies and these new websites that were running so quickly does go to show the level of arrogance that Mr. Hall in particular displayed.
After 3 years, Peter and his wife finally go to trial.
They tried everything they could to either derail the process, to justify what they were doing right through the trial. So it's incredibly frustrating. They don't show any remorse or acknowledgement of the crimes they've committed and the number of consumers that they've actually caused harm to.
Peter Hall was found guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and trademark infringements. He's sentenced to just under 14 years in prison. Peter's wife got 4 years for her part in the scam.
To this day, in terms of the size of the fraud, this is the largest investigation we've ever undertaken. We've undertaken lots of investigations into big frauds, multi-million-pound frauds, but this certainly, to this day, remains the largest.
Back in Gloucestershire, the investigation is sped up to a dangerous degree. A very routine burglary case has taken a disturbing turn. Damien's put 2 burglary suspects under covert surveillance, Eric Pearce and Matthew Jones. He's discovered that not only are the pair stealing expensive cars to order, they're also part of a criminal gang, leaving a trail of destruction in smash-and-grab raids.
That was the first time they started doing ram raids, so it was a completely different sort of crime, something that we hadn't associated these offenders to those sort of offences being committed.
A stolen BMW used in the raids is being tracked by the car's GPS, alongside Eric Pearce's mobile phone location. Damien knows that wherever the car goes, Pearce goes too.
It quite quickly became clear that some of the vehicles that I was investigating for being stolen were actually vehicles being used in some of the ram raids.
And they've got their mates in on it too. The 2 suspects and the gang target a supermarket.
And it's the stolen BMW that's been taken from her home a couple of hours before. You see all of the suspects, they're all clothed, hooded up, gloves on, masks on.
After smashing their way in and causing tens of thousands of pounds worth of damage, the gang are hoping to make off with cash and cigarettes worth thousands.
They brought a big blue plastic container so they can just scoop their rewards into and make off. Another camera shows that they've now jumped over the counter. The smoke alarm's gone off. The smoke alarm scared them, and they're running straight back out of the shop empty-handed. So they now all make their way into the BMW, which they use as their sort of getaway vehicle. And they've been there for just over 90 seconds.
But they haven't gone far. Damien's still tracking them. And after making their getaway empty-handed, the gang decide to target a nearby café in search of some cash.
About an hour and a half after the first ram raid at the supermarket, the BMW you see in CCTV and a second Astra turn up and they reverse into the café, causing an awful lot of damage and leaving largely empty-handed.
They might have left with nothing, but they did leave a trace.
No, it's the same people that have done this because the getaway car used in the supermarket ram raid is the same vehicle that's turned up here. The Astra that was used in the ram raid here at the train station, we can link back to the same series of people that were doing the burglaries at the homes, and it was stolen from a house during the burglary. We're happy. It's the same offenders that have done both jobs and all of the burglaries.
In just a matter of days, the gang have carried out 2 ram raids. What started out with the arrest of 2 wanted burglars has now spiraled into a serious organised crime operation. And Damien's certain who's running the show.
Our investigation quickly showed that they were the ringleaders, they were the senior members of this group. It got to the stage that they were committing such a high volume of offences, as in the number of offences and the value of property that they were taking each night, that we needed to react quickly.
After a painstaking investigation, Damien's convinced he now has enough evidence to topple the gang. But there's still one more piece of the jigsaw.
key thing for us was we needed to arrest them with their phones.
Without their phones, the case could collapse. Damien tracks both men to the same house, but moved too soon and he could blow the case.
Mindful that we didn't want there to be further victims, we had the home under surveillance. So we've gone in back in the front of the house. Both suspects are there. Arrested, phones in hands, done. The two suspects were arrested at the right time, which ensured that we obtained items of property belonging to them that were key to the investigation.
Weeks of surveillance has finally paid off. Eric Pierce and Matthew Jones are remanded in custody. When Damien looks at what's on their phones, the case only gets more serious. He finds footage of them posing with a gun and other stolen items. It links them to yet more crimes across the county.
The vast majority of the targeted homes were in expensive areas of the county, so if there were expensive high-end jewellery, handbags, they would often take them.
This little crime has become one of the biggest of Damien's career. Eric Pierce and Matthew Jones admit to 28 different burglary offences, including stealing cars worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. Each are sentenced to 7.5 years in prison.
These two were deeply affecting people and taking their property. No one wants to be burgled. It's a fear of most people. Our burglary rate effectively stopped the minute that we've arrested them, so there's no doubting that further victims have been prevented, and you can't really put a price on how successful that is.
There's one final case to wrap up today, back in London. A minor case of theft has taken a sinister turn. Shabnam's hunch that a scared victim is hiding something is right. And the more the victim reveals about what happened when she was locked in the flat, the more serious the investigation becomes.
She heard the lock go and she turned round and saw that he'd locked the door. And I think fear just built up in her because she thought, this doesn't seem right. Why would he lock the door? When she got inside, she realised that this was completely not what she had anticipated or what she was expecting. For starters, there was no parents. It was a sparse flat with, I think, a couple of chairs and a table. And she knew at that point that something was very, very wrong here.
Shabnam now has a case of false imprisonment to investigate. And it doesn't end there.
She'd said that he's demanding that she kiss him. And he's literally that close to her that he's ready to kiss her. He's touching her to bring her to him. If you don't let me kiss you, I'm going to force myself on you.
The victim's date has taken a sinister twist. And what she tells Shabnam next sets even more alarm bells ringing.
She'd said that he then said to her, you let me take photographs of you undressed. So he gave her an option, either you take your clothes off or I'm going to force myself on you. In the end, she thinks the better of the two is to allow him to take photographs of her in an undressed state.
Her terrifying experience just got even worse. Shabnam now realizes the victim's report of a stolen camera was a way of alerting the police to this man.
and then he took photographs of her, a number of photographs on his phone, and then allowed her to get dressed, and then, as if nothing had happened, said he'd take her back to the location of where he'd met her. She's traumatised. She is complying. It's almost like she's gone into a trauma and into robotic mode.
But fearing that her ordeal might not be over, the victim tells Shabnam that she had to take drastic action.
We're here on the A13. As you see, there's some traffic lights there. He stopped the car at the traffic lights, and she literally, as soon as she got an opportunity, she jumped out of the car and she was away on her toes. A really brave and courageous decision by her to be able to actually take control of what was going on and get away from him as soon as possible.
This has now escalated into a major investigation into kidnapping and sexual assault.
I don't like to use the word that this was a game changer, but it was really in that respect, because she seemed almost like complete relief that she was able to tell her story, her truth, and what had actually happened to her. And I mean, I could get upset about it now because it was really traumatic for her to give that first account of what had actually happened in respect of this wasn't just a theft of a camera. This was far more serious than what we'd first really realised that it was.
Shabnam needs to track down the suspect, and fast. But there's a problem. He's not who the victim thinks he is.
We don't know anything about him. The name that he'd used on the website was a pseudonym. It wasn't his name. He'd used a different name altogether. She didn't have photographs of him other than what she had on the website. She didn't know where he lived. We didn't have CCTV footage or anything like that that we found. We tried to locate that.
It's a big setback for the case. And Shabnam needs to find him before he strikes again.
There was a chance that if he'd got away with it once, he could do it again. Had he done it before? We didn't know. Was this a serial offender? We didn't know any of these things.
Shabnam has to identify the man behind the fake online profile. She goes directly to the dating site.
They wanted us to apprehend this particular individual because they didn't want him on their site or any other site to be able to commit further offences. It was through them that we were able to locate his, what you call the IP address. So we were able to get his address from his computer within days.
The unique IP address gives Shabnam the location of where the victim's attacker was using his computer. Officers head straight to the address. The man they're looking for opens the door. He's arrested.
It was his phone that was crucial to the evidence in terms of the photographs that he'd taken of her. We got the phone, and the photographs were still on that phone. We were pleased to note that he hadn't actually sent them out to anybody at this stage.
It should be case closed, but the man has a very different story.
He stated it was all consensual. She was happy to have the photographs taken. It would be very difficult to comprehend that looking at those photographs, that there was any form of consent.
Shabnam's convinced the victim was held against her will. But she needs more evidence.
We got photographs of the camera. We got the address that he had actually been to. We'd arrested him, but we still needed to link him, showing that he was actually the person that she met with on that occasion.
With no CCTV of the suspect and victim together, there's only one option left for Shabnam.
With identification parades, whether you have to face somebody face to face, it's a really brave thing to do, because effectively you're being confronted or having to confront the person that has traumatized you, that has abused you. It is really tough and really difficult to do.
In the space of just 10 days, Shabnam and her team are close to cracking the case. But charging the suspect all hinges on the victim facing her kidnapper once more.
And it was a huge relief that she was able to pick him out on the identification parade. And then he was charged with a number of offences, including the theft of the camera, which were kidnapping, false imprisonment with intent to commit an offence, and sexual touching of a female over the age of 16 years of age. So you can imagine really serious offences that have had huge impact and that will change this girl's life forever, really.
But there's one final twist to the case. The suspect pleads not guilty, meaning the victim will have to give evidence at trial.
We also had to consider that this girl was going to go through a court process, and what impact was that going to have on her. And at the end of this, we'd have started to worry that she might not want to go to court.
Shabnam faces a nervous wait. Will their victim and key witness take the stand?
She was, by this time, determined that she was going to pursue this matter because of the trauma that he'd put her through, and because of the fact that she didn't want other girls to go through it. She felt comfortable that she was ready now to go to court with this individual.
And her determination pays off. The suspect is found guilty of offences relating to kidnap, unlawful imprisonment, sexual assault, and theft.
That, for me, is another huge, proud moment for me in policing. You know, my roller coaster journey is worth everything when you get a conviction and you bring someone to justice, and your victim tells you that they are so grateful to you for giving them the support. To me, that's why I joined the police.
What started out as a report of a stolen camera ended in a very dangerous man being put behind bars.